amazing Mo Anderson. How could we not lead into that with success through people? You've exemplified that for us. Thank you.
Mo, welcome. We apologize for the technology glitches that we have, and yet we are very excited to have you here. And before we begin, congratulations. You have some very exciting news that's going to be a new addition to your family in September, I believe, right?
Right. We're going to be great-great-grandparents. I'm so excited.
Whoa.
That's so exciting. Congratulations.
Amazing.
Before we start, Richard, is everyone healthy, happy, staying
We're
safe?
doing good. I'm recovering from some surgery I had 5 weeks ago, and I'm doing great.
Good. You have enough of that distilled water, I hear. So. Very good. Very good. So, Mo, I'd like to jump right in, and could you give us some advice or words of wisdom on how do we protect the culture in our market centers, in our teams or our organization during such pivotal times?
Well, by simply living it. And I was telling another group a few minutes ago, they asked me pretty much the same question, and I said, our Y4C2Ts is really the foundation of our culture. They were kind of hung up with our value statement, a God, family, and business. They were kind of worried about the God part of that statement. But I was saying that the Y4C2Ts is really based on eternal truths. Because win-win or no deal is not going to go away. Even in coronavirus, the law of gravity, which is an eternal truth of physics, doesn't go away. Now, the actions you may take may have to change, but the truth will never go away. Truth is truth, and it'll last forever. Like when she read those off, like success through people. Success in Keller Williams is achieving things through people, but we may have to do it a different way. Just like I was told by a Michigan person that a Michigan agent took 11 listings yesterday, and it was all done without him having to go to the houses. Yep. He looked at them through virtual stuff.
That's great.
So we may change what we do. Like one market center has adopted a restaurant and another business, and they're trying to save that business from closing. So they all called their sphere of influence to encourage people to order food from the restaurant. And I don't know what they did with the other business, but the restaurant guy called Keller Williams and says, I don't know what you're doing, but please keep doing it because my business is fabulous. See, all of their customers and clients called that restaurant. So that's an example of a way that they're changing what they do to spread the Keller Williams culture that we already have.
Amen.
I can do that kind of a lot of other, things that are going on out there if you want me to, but that's one example.
No, I think that's great. And what you said of us, we're still adhering to our same principles. We just might have to step outside of the box and look at how to tweak what we've done in the past. So thank you with that.
And see, fear, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, to that point, it's a great lead into the question. And you wrote a message to all of us in KW, and you reminded us that creativity flows in the absence of and challenges us to allow our creativity to flow as never before. And so what words of wisdom do you have for some of our associates, some of our leaders, all of our leaders out there that may be struggling to push their fears aside during this time of uncertainty? I'm concerned for our people, Mo. So what advice do
Well,
you have?
sure, you're concerned. We're all scared. We all experience fear. And if you have an agent that tells you they're not experiencing fear, they're telling a fib, because we're all experiencing fear. I have 3 market centers that I need to shore up. I've got a region I need to shore up, and I'm Gary's business partner, so I have an international company to shore up. And those cash calls aren't in thousands, those cash calls are in the millions. So see, I sit here and I'm fearful because all this money I've saved through the years may not be enough to cover all that. So we all have fear. Now, we all may do different kinds of things to boot it out of our head, but the way I boot it out of our head is I memorized a Bible verse when I was a child, and it says, God has not given you a spirit of fear. He's given you a spirit of power. That's confidence. Gives you this power. Power, love. Well, we've all experienced love in Keller Williams. You know what that's all about. And of a sound mind. So it's power, love, and a sound mind. Well, a sound mind means mindset. And there are 4 truths about mindset that I want you to remember. By changing your inner thoughts about something will change the outer aspects of your life. So how you think about it inside your head changes what can happen in your real life going on. That's truth number 1. And that is really, really powerful when you really understand that the way you think could actually change your circumstances. Truth number 2 is what you really believe is true. If there is something that you really believe it's true. For example, like the Michigan agent who took 11 listings yesterday believed he could get listings yesterday. He believed that was true. He got 11. And one of their agents from their phoning got 4.
Wow, that's great.
We're going to have to get him on a call next week.
They believed that it was true. Now, here's the issue. If you really believe something is true, it sets up inside your head a desire to do the things that will help it come true. Because see, you believe it's true, you believe it can happen, so fear can't paralyze you. And then you end up making your calls.
Yeah, that's good.
And that one guy or gal got 11 listings. The other one got 4.
Wow.
Who wouldn't like that today?
Yeah, that's fabulous. I love that.
So it really stimulates your senses to do the things you need to do to make that come true. Now, truth number 3. When you want to think something positive, but the alligators are nipping all the way around you, they're nipping at your feet, they're nipping at your legs, they're nipping at your arms. It is hard to think something's really positive when you're in the middle of a whole bunch of alligators. It's the hardest thing in the world to do. But when we lost all of our money in the late 80s, when the oil bust happened, now remember, I grew up in the oil patch. I grew up in an oil state. And I love oil companies, whereas a lot of people in the country now hate them. But I still love them.
Yes.
So don't say anything bad about oil companies to me, because they have been.
Who don't you love? You love everybody.
Oh, they've been wonderful. They give all of our kids scholarships, and they
Wow.
do these unbelievable things for the community. So I just love them. And some years they make $3 billion, and the next 4 years they won't make a penny. So it's a real risky kind of business. But we lost all of our money back then. And I tried to have a mindset of what it would look like after we got through that. And it was really hard to do because we owed $1.3 million. I didn't have enough money to go to Austin when Gary called me to come. And when he said, "Will you come?" I said, "Yes." And I thought, why did I say yes? I don't have enough money for an airfare. I don't have enough money to pay for a hotel. So that afternoon, after I'd said yes, a credit card came in the mail. I activated that sucker, and I got me airfare, and I paid for my hotel. So let me tell you what, do you realize what kind of shape you'd be in if I hadn't had a mindset to say yes?
We'd all be in a lot of trouble.
We do.
Because now that I look back on that experience, and that horrible, horrible experience, it was really almost as bad as coronavirus, except they didn't lock us up in our houses, so to speak. The economy just evaporated.
Sure.
But now that I look back on that, it took that adversity to set up circumstances so Gary Keller could accidentally find me, that lucky guy.
Yeah.
He was really lucky to have found me because I was the right person to help him turn around the ship and get it on the straight and narrow, if you know what I mean. It was really struggling.
So Mo, are you saying that he found that opportunity in a time where you were having a challenge? It was an opportunity for him, and he seeked it out and took that opportunity.
He was having a challenge too because the oil bust hit Texas also.
Right.
But he heard about me. He took the opportunity to call me and learn more about me. He flew up here, met with me. Then later he invited me to that very special meeting. And the rest is history.
Yep.
So in this adversity, there will be opportunities for every agent in our company if they can keep the fear out so they're not paralyzed. Because when you're paralyzed, you don't see the opportunity. You don't hear the opportunity because you're paralyzed.
Right.
But if they'll keep the fear out. Now, I quote that little verse about 20 times, and it just knocks the fear out of my head.
Yeah.
But you could do it through affirmation. Through affirmations. There are a lot of ways you can kick the fear out.
That's
But
great.
you've got to kick it out. And it's an exercise that you do. Like the mind is like a muscle. And you have to exercise it. Every morning you have to get up and say, what is my mindset in the middle of this coronavirus? I got to get it right. I got to get the fear out so that I can believe I can get listings and believe I can get sales. And in states where we're allowed to work a little bit, shoot, we're doing a whole bunch. With booties on our feet, gloves on our hands, and masks on our faces.
Thank you.
We just had to change the way we do the business.
Change the way we look at things, and the things we look at change, right?
That's right.
And it sounds like we need to get away from those alligators. We have to watch what our environment is to make
do it by getting a good mindset.
Mm-hmm.
They'll stop nipping.
That's right.
And the last truth I want to tell you about mindset is that your mind is just a part of who you are. Like your leg is a part of who you are. Your head is a part of who you are. And it should be your servant, not your master.
Okay.
Your mind should not control you. You should control your mind.
Control it. Great.
You control it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mo, you've been lovingly nicknamed the Velvet Hammer, and you've taught us to lead by holding very high standards. And one of the most important gifts we can do for our people is hold them accountable. When we are trying to love our people during this hard time, how do we still enforce our standards and hold them accountable with loving on them?
Well, let me give you an example. I love to send flowers, you know, and I just send flowers to everybody. Well, I probably won't now because I got to watch my pennies, but at the end of the year, I have spent a boatload of money on flowers. And I have a florist in Austin and a florist in Oklahoma City. And they both tell me that I am their biggest customer.
Mm.
Now, I want you to know, girls, that not one person from that florist, either place, has called me to see how I am.
Wow. And you're their
I
biggest
have
customer.
a restaurant in Texas that I take Keller Williams people to. It's the restaurant in the old hotel, in the Driscoll Hotel.
Yep.
Driscoll. Mhm.
Yep.
And here I have a restaurant. I spend thousands of dollars taking Keller Williams people to those restaurants. I'm probably one of their better customers.
Mhm.
And no one from those restaurants have called me. So here we are. I'm mad. I'm ticked off because those people have not called me. I'm thinking about getting me a different florist, different restaurants, and I'm going to tell them, if we have another bad thing happen to us and you don't call me and ask me how I am, I'm going to dump you too. Well, see, that's how your agents, people, that's how your people feel, your sphere of influence. And so as a team leader, you have got to call them.
Mhm.
You have got to get your people to call their sphere of influence. And I'm sure they are, but there are a few who aren't.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you have to hold them accountable to make those calls.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first thing you do is call your, I'm sure you did, was to call your agents. I just want to know how you are, what do you need, how can I help you, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Well, your next call to the agent is, now, for example, a Keller Williams agent in Orlando called Oliver Spear, just loving on him, that first call. And she said, if there's anything you need, call me back. And a woman called her back and said, I'm elderly, I need my prescriptions. Can you go get my prescriptions and bring them to me? Well, she got her address and found out she lived over an hour away. But because this agent wasn't paralyzed by fear, a thought popped into her mind. Why don't I find an Uber Facebook group? She found an Ocala, that's where the woman was, Facebook group, called an Uber driver, and that woman had her medication in less than 30 minutes, and she thinks that agent is a genius. And the bond that now exists between that agent and that woman, who's she going to call when she gets ready to sell her house and move into assisted living or whatever? She's going to call that agent.
Absolutely.
And
Serving.
You brainstorm, like another market center. They have adopted, have I already told you this, the restaurant?
Yes, yeah, you told us.
Okay, I told you that.
Yep.
But see, there are all sorts of creative ideas going on that your people will think of as you brainstorm with them that will change their life because they're free of fear.
I love it.
I find it so,
you say to them as a team leader, well, listen here, darling, I'm gonna be giving you an idea every day, so get ready.
I love it. An idea away. Mary Beth.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say is you know, if we could love on our people and just give them action, and as team leaders connecting throughout the country, throughout the world, and we're hearing these wonderful stories of success in this time of challenge, it's great that we get to bring it back to our market centers and we kind of bring it to our group and let them get creative about it. But as a leader, we do have to bring those ideas sometimes, and it's okay because we've been built for a time like this.
Well, that's right. And Julie, you mentioned the distilled water.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I ended up with 103 gallons on my front porch. That was because an agent called her sphere of influence. She spent all day driving around picking up that water.
That's
103 gallons.
That's so
I'm now
amazing.
giving some of it to other people who need it for medical reasons.
Absolutely.
But see, that happened because her sphere of influence was so eager to help. We had an agent die yesterday of corona.
Yep.
And now there's medical bills, there's hospital bills, and there's a 12-year-old daughter who needs a scholarship fund. So the market center set up a GoFundMe account, but it hit 3,000 and they were kind of discouraged. And I said, get your agents to call their sphere of influence and say, we got to help this person because they've got medical bills, etc. And if you can give 50 cents or you can give $1,000 or anything in between would be so appreciated you can't imagine. So some of them started calling their sphere, and guess what happened to the GoFundMe? Zoom.
I'm sure. And a lot of times, Mo, people want to help and yet they just don't know how. So
They don't know what to do.
Exactly. So bringing your sphere into this and offering them ways to help and give back is another touch.
Now, one other thing that some agents are doing that's working really well is after they've done the warm and fuzzy and lovey stuff for several times to their sphere, one of them called their sphere and said, and it wasn't even his listing, it was somebody's listing in the market center. He said, I just want you to know that we've got this little 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that would make the best rental property in the whole wide world because it's as cute as it can be. The house is. It's really a cute house. And he said, I'm trying to get a list of grandmothers and grandfathers who want to buy an investment property for their little 3-year-old or whatever grandchild. And when she gets ready to go to school, they can sell it and take the equity and put it in their college fund. He got bunches of names from from his sphere, and some of his sphere was interested. So he's selling rental houses to these people because some of them still have money.
Yeah,
That's right.
Absolutely.
That sounds like a Gene Rivers. That sounds like Gene Rivers in the heat pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mary Beth, I think you had something else to ask, Mo?
About when we get on the other side of this crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I foresee us out of this crisis. Let's see us on the other side. And I would love to know, what would you like to see come from this for our communities, our market centers, our teams, and most importantly, for our families? If there's one lesson that comes from it.
Let's start with the agents and the market centers. I see in my head agents calling their sphere of influence, like 3 times a week for a different reason each time.
Okay.
And I see them doing business just because they're calling them. And I see in my head them having a lot of leads by the time this is over. And they will be so busy, they'll be thankful that we had a crisis that forced them to start making their phone calls, and that they will make more money than they need.
I love that.
So they can save it and they can give it away.
Yep. That's wonderful. I love that. Great.
That's what I see. Now, what else did you say? You said agents, market centers, and what else?
our community?
Market centers, teams, most importantly, their families.
Well, their family will see how much productivity came from calling their sphere. And they'll even be more behind their real estate parent than they were before, because they're seeing with their own eyes what's happening as a result of making calls. And then when they grow up and they become an agent and take over their parents' business, they'll get it a little bit sooner.
I love it.
Before you go into your next question, I just want to put a plug for Mo's book, A Joy-Filled Life. It's the 7 pillars of a joy-filled life. This has been transformational for my life. And the stories in here about your childhood and your conversations with your dad about money,
Yes.
I want to tell you have personally impacted me. And so if you haven't read this, it's a really fun, good, you get to know Mo, and great lessons in every chapter. So
well, it's kind of a good book to read during this crisis.
It is.
There's a lot of lessons in there that apply.
That's right.
During this time.
Might be a good book club, Mary Beth, for us to do with our teams.
Me, yeah.
Mo, so you took our company from 1,800 agents to 180,000. If you could look back, or knowing what you know now, what are 1 or 2 things that you wish you could have done differently that we may be able to learn from?
I wish I'd gone to college and majored in business instead of elementary education, because I'm probably the only CEO in the history of the world that doesn't have a business class, hasn't had a business class in her whole life. And so I wish I had done that.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved my teaching so much that I probably wouldn't have. What else would I do differently? Well, I probably would have implemented the standards a little bit sooner in the company. I was so busy figuring out how we were going to make enough money to survive that I did that a little bit later.
Okay.
When was that?
Pardon?
When was that? When did you introduce us to the Y4C2Ts?
Well, Gary introduced everybody to the Y4C2Ts, but nobody really understood what it meant and they didn't follow it. I feel like so he gave birth to that. I just feel like I'm a person who helped it come alive.
For sure.
If you know what I mean. I didn't start implementing standards really until probably the 2nd year, because the 1st year I spent so much time on cleanup, because in the first few months I was there, I closed 15 offices and I foreclosed on 5 regions.
Yeah. Yep. Wow. So
Sounds like
standards,
success. Well, to that point is like, does that sound, that's what sometimes we need to do, is to clean house and look at what what mess we've created, or what has changed and maybe doesn't work still when it used to work. And I mean, you just kind of came in and made it work for us.
Well, see, in the company I built before Keller Williams, before I'd even heard of Keller Williams, mm-hmm. I made certain that when I interviewed an agent, I gave them a written sheet of what was going to be expected of them. And I said, if you can't live up to this, we're really not a match. And this really isn't the office you should consider. And it was things like, you don't miss a team meeting unless there's a death or you're sick or you're out of town. Obviously, you have to miss it then if you're on vacation or something.
Sure.
Well, see, as a result of that, I had about a 98% of my people came to the team meeting.
Because,
well, I spent hours trying to make them fun and educational.
That's fantastic.
So I had things like I expect you to spend 2 hours a day, is what I had back then, calling the people you know, and then meeting people and adding people to your call list. We didn't have computers back then.
Great.
That's unbelievable. So I had all of these expectations. And so then see, when they didn't do diddly squat, I would sit down with them and I'd say, I'm going to give you 30 days. You don't do what you're supposed to do in 30 days. We're just not a match. And I'm not going to let you lose money.
Love
So
that.
it was kind of 2 strikes and you're out.
I love that.
Later, I changed it to 3 strikes and you're out, but so to speak. But you have to let people know what the expectations are.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't, human nature just is such that they're not going to do what they're supposed to do.
Sure.
So you just love on them like crazy, then you stick the dagger in, and then you love on them some more.
That's your sandwich.
Sandwich method.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So what does it actually look like to have a servant leader's heart? To Mo Anderson, how do you identify that servant leader's heart?
A servant leader is one who just loves to see other people achieve. They love to see other people have their needs met. They love to help other people. They just love other people.
Right.
And they love themselves enough to take care of themselves so that they can be servants to other people. So that's what a servant's heart looks like. You don't do what you do to feed your own ego, or it might for just a minute, then you catch it and you shove that out of your head and say, I'm not doing this to make me look good. I'm doing it because I'm helping another person.
Thank you.
That's a blessing that nobody can take away from me, because I'll be blessed if I do that.
Thank you.
I love that you do have to be careful, because there is a moment, and I think everybody, we're human.
That's right.
And a lot of our agents and leaders have a very, everybody has a bit of, it's not an ego, but there's a confidence that we're gaining, right?
Honey, it's called ego.
And so it's great to hear from you to say that it does happen, and it's just, wait, hold on, what am I doing this for? And are the interest of the people that I'm serving, is that really what is in the front line here? Or am I putting me first? And this would be a good time to check yourself when you're making those calls and doing the activities in your database. You really are serving the community and the people right now, maybe without even $1 for the next 3 to 6 months for some of our areas.
Yeah. Well, that's so true. And let me give you a personal example. All of you know how much the inspirational morning means to me.
Mm-hmm.
I love doing the inspirational morning, and I won't give it up,
Good.
I just want to do that until I die, if I physically can.
Amen.
And every year before that program begins, I have the Keller Williams prayer team in the green room with me behind stage. And I say, girls, pray for me that I take my ego out of this. I'm so excited to get to see the agents and they get to see me. And I'm so excited that I get to teach them some principles about hospitality, showing love to other religions, showing love to other people. And I say, help me, pray for me to be an instrument, not be thinking about myself. And those gals just pray for me like crazy. because everybody in a position of leadership has little old Mr. Evil Ego back here knocking at your brain and tapping you on the shoulder, trying to make you think it's about you when it's not.
Thank you.
And I think one of the reasons why the inspirational morning, because see, my whole goal and desire deep in my heart is for those people to be so moved in their heart when they hear these stories that they'll go home, get off their duff, and go do something wonderful for somebody.
Yep. Yeah, we love that.
And a lot of them do. And if I make it about me, that'll stop, because it'll kill the Holy Spirit's ability to move on the heart of a person and speak to their heart and let them know what they ought to do.
Sure.
And that's going to happen to anybody, whether they're a Christian or a Hindu or an atheist. Doesn't make any difference what they are. There will be something which I call the Holy Spirit to move on their heart. And then when their heart is touched, then they'll take action. They won't take action if it's just their brain that's touched. Do you hear my point?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I could actually give you an example, and I think you know this, and a lot of our viewers may know this, but because of you and because of that book and because of your influence inside of my journey here with Keller Williams for the last 16 years, I too took action 5 years ago and opened up a faith-based women's transitional home that runs purely on profit share. And you blessed my ladies at the breakfast with a whole bunch of books. You were able to take care of the shipping because we had to get it out real quick so that we could get a couple cases of books. That was 5 years ago, and I am proud to say that we have helped over 8 families, and I would say 22 children at least, get through some really tough times. And it's from your inspiration that you encouraged me to do that, and I thank you for that.
Well, it was really
Perth Amboy, New Jersey.
It was really God's inspiration.
Yeah.
He just used me as an instrument. So
Yes.
that's why it's so important for me to try my best to keep that Mr. Evil Ego out of the picture, because that's when it flows through me or flows through the stories at Inspirational Breakfast and hits your heart. And then you took the action. That is just so neat.
I love it. I love it. And I make sure that everybody gets a flight that leaves after Inspirational Breakfast, because I know how much it's going to impact that emotion, which is going to take them to action. And I thank you. I love you so much, Mo. You have no idea how you've impacted.
Here's an air hug.
Air hugs.
Yeah. Now an air hug ends in hugging yourself.
So Mo, I want to be cautious of your time. I know you've got a very, very packed schedule. So
actually, I'm pretty good right now.
Okay, then I'd like to ask you another question if we could.
Yeah.
Would you speak to the women on our that are here on our calls and live with us as we're trying to be successful businesswomen, lead teams and mothers and wives and lead our family? What has always been your inspiration to keep everything in alignment? Sometimes that gets a little tricky.
Well, when I did Keller Williams, my kids were grown and gone. Because remember, I met Gary when I was 54, and I became CEO when I was 57.
That's
57. And I have
That's inspiring.
And I have 60-year-old women telling me, "Oh, I'm too old," and I just want to. That's so silly. It's pathetic. Anyway, so I didn't have children at home when I was building KW. And the first year, Richard was here finishing up a doctorate degree in pharmacy. And see, so I didn't have any responsibilities at home. Mm-hmm. But when I built my first company, I did have, the kids were in junior high. Karen was in junior high and Rick was in high school.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, I've got some regrets because I didn't get to all of Karen's sports, her basketball games, because she was a cheerleader. And I regret that. That will be a regret I have to, when I go to my grave. I didn't see Rick in every single, he was a runner. That was his sport, was running. And I didn't see him in all of his meets because I was building a company, and that's so time consuming.
Yep.
And I have a regret about that, and that will be with me when I go underground. And so I just want to encourage you women to think through what you've not done that you wished you would have. And maybe you can squeeze that in while we're locked down. And for those of you who have children to educate, I don't know how you do it, but I do know that if you get a model, for your educational thing, and I hear there are some wonderful ones out there, it will enable you to do it in a short period of time, which will leave a portion of the day for you to do the things with your kids maybe you haven't ever done before, which will leave the rest of your day for you to make your calls, your real estate calls to your sphere of influence, 2 and 3 times a week, or, sticking the kids in a room where they watch a movie and you and your husband have an hour to yourselves. It's really, really, really tough. It's so much easier when the kids are in school.
Sure.
Yeah, you just made a really good example. Good idea would be, what if some of our moms that are out there started some community-based like Facebook groups to help other business owner women get through this time also? I'm sure that would be a really great way to start a new sphere of influence locally.
And maybe help save their businesses.
And
let
marriages,
me give you a
probably.
story that happened with one agent, and this agent was also in Florida. Her daughter loved dancing, and so and the teacher closed the studio because she had to. The government said you had to close. And so she called the teacher and said, "Can you open your studio up? Only do it through Zoom or through Facebook or through something. I mean, through FaceTime calls or whatever. I'm not
technology.
And so the woman said, well, she said, let me think about it. So the woman called the agent back the next day and said, if I could figure out a way to charge a small fee, she said, I figured out how I could do it technology-wise. So the agent called her sphere of influence and said, if you want your daughter or your son or whoever to take dance lessons, let me tell you about this exciting new thing that's happening on Zoom or whatever it was on. And so she found, I don't know how many students through her sphere of influence. Call your neighbors if they want their little girl on, let me know. And anyway, the teacher is now going to be able to save her dance studio because she's found a way to teach them digitally. Isn't that amazing?
That's so great. And what it does.
I love that story.
Yep. And
I actually shared that with my team because I loved it so much. I said, look what Mo was writing here. This is what we need to be doing with our local business owners. We have the answers in the MREA, the one thing on all of our calls and our KWRI calls. The answer is there to help everybody that's in business. Forget about real estate, it's business. And I just love that example.
And then you say, You know, I'm looking for a grandmother and a grandfather to buy this cute as the bug house,
Yeah.
you know, for their grandkid at the end of the conversation.
Love it.
Every day.
I think we have one last question, Mary Beth.
One last question is, being a woman of faith, God, family, business, how has your faith gotten you through your difficult times in your life? And we know you've shared with us on a national level, you have had some real challenges with the house and the business, and you just said 1.3 million. How has faith gotten you through? And what can our people hang on to during this time, from Mo Anderson?
Well, I always lean into faith during adversity, and I don't care what you are, if you're Jewish or you're whatever you are, you can lean into faith. Because I understand that this life is really short. I mean, here I'm going to be 83 2 days before Red Day. 83! And it just seems like the other day when I was 40. Do you get my point? Time flies like you wouldn't believe, especially the older you get. And I understand that where we are on earth is a temporary place. And I know my real home is not here. And so I lean into my faith because I have a glorious hope. Yesterday, Easter was, you know, that glorious day where I know I'm going to be okay when I'm gone. And when you lean into your faith, it's just kind of like a magic. It just helps you lift above your circumstances, as bad as they are. And I didn't put them all in the book because I didn't want to embarrass my kids, and I didn't want to embarrass people who, you know, I just put a few in my book. And, you know, we've had a son who was alcoholic, and that was just the most horrible thing in the whole world. He's fine now and has been sober for years, but let me tell you, it was hell to go through. So I've had a lot of adversity, but every time my faith has been able to lift me up. And that's what it's meant to me.
Thank you so much.
You mentioned Red Day and your birthday. What do you see? What are some things you're seeing for Red Day? Because we'd like to give people some ideas as to what they can do in this time, because we are having Red Day, correct, Mo?
Yes, absolutely. May 14th. And it's going to be the best Red Day we've ever had, because you're going to get everybody in your office to participate, whatever project you choose. Everything in the whole world's being done. Everything from driving cars to the hospital and honking when one shift leaves and the next shift goes in to the hospital, and giving the masks and taking them food and all that kind of stuff, to taking masks to their sphere of influence, everybody's sphere of influence, you know, and putting them in a package on the front porch and ringing the doorbell and leaving, and it says, from your real estate agent who cares about you. You know, here's some masks.
I've heard there are some, I think Colette.
Yes, do you have her link?
I don't have her link yet. I will get that and share it with everybody on here. Would you like to share?
I'll try to remember to send it to you when we hang up.
Okay.
I mean, there's just so many creative ideas going on. One market center is, they have adopted 5 businesses to save.
I love that.
Well,
I have Ogla, who's an OP down in Florida. She says she's looking into the feeding a healthcare hero program for
and
their
doing
market
it
center.
through a restaurant that you're trying to save.
Yeah, great. Well, Mo, we appreciate you so much for taking the time to visit with us, and you, Richard, your daughter, and her precious baby that she's carrying. You'll all be
my granddaughter.
Granddaughter.
Great grandmother. Woohoo!
You'll all be in our prayers, and I can't wait to see you soon.
Well, I love you all, and I don't know how many you have on your line, but I love them too, and I pray every morning, every single morning, for agents to be able to see that they can do business through this mess. They just have to tweak it and do it a little bit different. I've heard agents say, oh, it won't work in my area to do virtual tours, and I said, oh yes, darling, it will. Get over that. That's negative. It's working everywhere. Why wouldn't it work where you are?
Yeah,
That's right.
great.
So I guess we could end this with a big hug.
A big hug. I love you guys.
Love you too,
I
Mom.
love you.
March, you can do this.
Thank you.
Sphere of influence, sphere of influence, sphere of influence.
Love you,
Bye-bye.
Mo.
Love you all.